Welcome back to the Music Room, broadcasting right here from Atchison, Kansas. We are so thrilled you could join us today for another deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We've got a really incredible story to look at today.
We really do. I mean, okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you're a 17-year-old boy, right? And you are just so paralyzed by years of really severe bullying that your whole instinct is to just like physically fold in on yourself.
Right, just shrinking away.
Exactly. You just want to shrink.
Yeah.
You want to disappear into the floorboards so nobody notices you. But then imagine that same terrified, shrinking teenager opening his mouth and instantly producing this massive, booming, resonant sound of like a 40-year-old Italian opera veteran.
It's totally wild.
It's a stark physiological contradiction. How can a voice that a voice that requires taking up so much physical and acoustic space, how does that even exist inside a vessel that feels so fragile?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it completely challenges our fundamental understanding of how vocal performance actually works.
Right, so?
Well, we're conditioned to believe that a world-class instrument, especially in the operatic realm, requires this equally robust ego, right? Like you have to be a diva.
Oh, absolutely. The classic maestro ego.
Exactly. But what we are analyzing today is really a case study in how a truly monumental talent was nurtured not by, supreme self-confidence, but by profound vulnerability and a protective psychological buffer, and eventually this really radical public healing process.
Which is exactly the mission of our deep dive today. We're tracking the remarkable musical and personal evolution of vocalist Jonathan Antoine.
Such an amazing journey.
It really is. So we're going to examine the transcripts that chart his path, starting from his foundational moments as that profoundly shy 17-year-old auditioning for Britain's Got Talent alongside his friend Charlotte.
Right, back in 2012.
Yep, 2012, all the way to a completely different era of his life. We're going to end the show by really dissecting the history, the orchestration, and the lyrics of his emotionally devastating solo rendition of the song Bang Bang.
And the contrast between those two eras is really what merits such close analysis today. We are essentially looking at the before and after of a true emotional alchemy.
Okay, so let's unpack this from the very beginning.
Okay.
Because to understand how he eventually gets to a solo performance as complex as Bang Bang, we really have to examine the baseline.
Right.
Where he started.
Exactly. And the baseline, in 2012, is a kid who honestly doesn't even want to be in the room.
No, not at all.
Like the initial idea to pair Jonathan and 16-year-old Charlotte together, that didn't even come from them. The transcript notes it was their singing teacher's idea.
Which is such a crucial detail.
Right. Which makes me wonder, was this a musical decision on the teacher's part, or was it like a psychological intervention?
I'd say it's highly likely it was the latter. Because from a purely technical, musical standpoint, pairing a classical tenor with a commercial pop voice is a total logistical headache.
Really? Why is that? Well, the resonance strategies are just entirely different. I mean, a classical tenor drops the larynx and creates this massive acoustic chamber in the pharynx.
Right, right.
And they do that to amplify the sound over a whole orchestra without a microphone. But a pop singer, they keep the larynx much higher, operating closer to just regular speech level.
Oh, sure, because they have the mic to do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. They rely on the microphone. So mixing those two entirely different acoustic environments in a single duet, it's exceptionally difficult to balance.
So the singing teacher wasn't just throwing two complementary voices together for an easy win at a talent show.
Not at all.
The teacher must have seen a deficit. Like, if Jonathan has this massive operatic capability, why on earth does he need a pop singer standing right next to him?
Because you have to remember that the vocal apparatus isn't just a collection of muscles and cartilage.
Right.
It's an extension of the autonomic nervous system.
Oh, wow. Okay, I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah. When a person is experiencing severe anxiety, the sympathetic nervous system activates that classic fight-or-flight response. Cortisol spikes.
Right, you get stressed.
Yeah, and your breathing becomes really shallow, sort of trapped up in the upper chest. And most critically for a singer, the false vocal folds, which are positioned just above the true vocal folds, they can literally constrict to protect the airway.
Oh, like your body's literally choking itself off to defend against an attack.
Exactly. When that happens, the throat feels completely tight. You literally cannot produce a free, resonant, operatic sound if your nervous system perceives a threat in the room.
Which brings us to, honestly, what I think is the most agonizing part of that 2012 audition transcript.
It's tough to read. Yeah.
It really is. When the judge asks Jonathan why he's so quiet, He just admits to having these severe problems with his size since primary school.
Yeah.
He says that when people mocked him, it would, and this is a direct quote, take a little piece out of me, in a sense.
That phrasing is so telling.
It breaks my heart. He is describing the exact psychological threat that should physically prevent him from being able to sing at all, based on what you just said.
Absolutely. That phrasing, take a little piece out of me, it's clinically significant because he isn't describing an acute trauma, like one single terrifying event.
Right, it's not like a car crash.
Right. He is describing a chronic systemic erosion of the self. Peer victimization in those really formative years, it fundamentally alters a child's perception of safety.
Because they're just constantly under siege.
Exactly. If your baseline assumption is that the environment is hostile, your body just remains in this low-level state of physiological guarding at all times.
So how does he sing at all, then? If his body is guarding against an attack on that stage, how does he drop his larynx and open his chest and produce that sound?
Well,
I'm looking at Charlotte's role in this.
Yeah.
And she immediately steps right in front of the judges when they start questioning him.
She really does.
She warns them. She says, let me find it. She says, before you make a judgment on someone, I think you really need to get to know them. It's not as cliche as not judging a book by its cover. You've got to read what's inside.
Yeah, she is aggressively defensive.
Very. So how does her being there fix his vocal cords?
Because Charlotte is functioning as what we would call a physiological regulator.
A physiological regulator.
Yeah. In the study of trauma, there's this concept called co-regulation.
Oh, okay, I think I've heard of that.
So when one person's nervous system is totally dysregulated by fear, the presence of a trusted, calm, and highly protective figure can actually signal safety to their brain.
Oh, wow.
And that allows the parasympathetic nervous system to take over and lower those physical defenses. Charlotte isn't just his friend, you see.
Right.
She is literally the localized environment in which he feels safe enough to physically relax his throat.
Man, that completely changes the metaphor for me. I mean, usually when I think of a protective friend in these situations, I think of them as a shield. Or maybe like a steel case around a really fragile instrument, like carrying a priceless, fragile Stradivarius violin in a steel case.
That's a common way to think about it.
Right, and Charlotte is the steel case, but a shield implies you're still actively under attack. What you're describing is more like a ground wire in a really high-voltage electrical circuit.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Because Jonathan has this massive, totally dangerous electrical current, right? His raw vocal talent and all that suppressed emotion.
Yes.
But because of his trauma, his system is prone to overloading and just short-circuiting into panic. So Charlotte is the ground wire. She takes all that chaotic, anxious energy and grounds it, stabilizing the circuit so the power can actually flow out safely as music.
There's a highly accurate mechanical comparison, actually. And the thing is, Jonathan intuitively understands this mechanism himself.
He does.
Yeah, he states explicitly on stage, I really don't think I'd be going up on stage today if I didn't have Charlotte by my side.
Oh, right. I remember that.
He is acknowledging right there that the hardware, his voice, cannot function without the software patch that she provides.
That is just incredible. And when they finally perform their song, The Prayer, the result of that grounded circuit is just astonishing. The judges are completely floored.
I mean, they were stunned.
Alicia calls it world class, noting that mix of pop and opera. But then, and this is where things get really tense, we hit the primary conflict of this entire BGT era.
Oh, boy. Simon Cowell.
Yes, Simon Cowell, the ultimate music industry executive, assesses the situation. He calls Jonathan unbelievable and a future star, and he explicitly compares him to a young Pavarotti.
Which is high praise from Cowell.
Huge praise. But then he coldly tells Jonathan that his head says he should dump Charlotte.
It's a really fascinating collision between human psychology and music industry economics.
I'm not going to lie, I find myself getting actively angry reading Cowell's comments here.
You're definitely not alone in that reaction.
It just feels like manufactured reality TV cruelty, Like, Jonathan just stood there and explained that he is a victim of bullying, that his self-esteem is completely shattered, and that Charlotte is essentially his lifeline.
Right.
And Cowell's immediate response is basically, cut your lifeline so I can sell you more easily as a solo act. It seems completely devoid of basic human empathy.
It is very easy to view Cowell as the villain in that exchange, and a lot of people did. But, we have to analyze his logic through the lens of artist and repertoire, or A&R.
Okay, defend the A&R logic for me because I am struggling.
Well, Cowell isn't a therapist, right? He is a mathematician of market viability.
That's a good way to put it.
And the classical crossover market, which is the space occupied by artists like Andrea Bocelli or Josh Groban, it's highly lucrative, but it's extremely specific.
Right, it has a very particular audience.
Exactly. And it relies heavily on the narrative of the solitary, transcendent virtuoso, the lone genius with the golden voice.
But art isn't an algorithm. You can't just isolate the most technically proficient variable Jonathan's voice and expect the whole emotional equation to hold up.
Well, from Cowell's perspective, you can, and frankly, you must. He is looking at touring logistics, record deal structures, demographic targeting.
The business side of it?
Exactly. A teenage duo singing pop opera. To the industry, that's a novelty act. It has a shelf life.
A gimmick?
Right. But a solo tenor with a generational voice, that is a global, multi-decade franchise. Cowell is attempting to strip away what he perceives as just a temporary crutch to reveal the core marketable asset.
Okay, I understand the spreadsheet logic of it. I really do. But it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the artist's actual engine.
How so?
Because Cowell assumes the talent is a static resource. He thinks the voice will sound exactly the same if Charlotte is physically removed from the stage.
Ah, I see what you mean.
But based on what we just discussed about nervous system regulation, if Cowell had successfully forced Jonathan to dump Charlotte right then and there under all those lights, the voice likely would have just collapsed. The throat would have closed up.
That is the precise blind spot in the purely commercial approach to talent. Yeah. It entirely fails to account for the psychological scaffolding that's required to deploy that talent under immense pressure.
Yes.
Cowell evaluated the vocal cords, but he completely ignored the vagus nerve.
Oh, that's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
He ignored the vagus nerve. And thankfully, Jonathan ignored Cowell.
He did.
He chooses loyalty over the immediate, shiny promise of solo stardom. They stay together.
Yeah.
And by doing so, we enter this phase where we get to watch the slow, very public reconstruction of a human being.
It's really beautiful to watch.
It is. The transcripts in the semifinals and the finals show this rapid evolution.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, in the semifinals, they perform Caruso.
Oh, such a gorgeous song.
Right, written by Lucio Dalla. And it requires immense emotional depth and technical control. But the feedback from the judges shifts noticeably here.
How did it shift?
They start focusing solely on Jonathan's anomaly of a voice, and they start actually recognizing the symbiosis between the two of them.
Yes. Alicia highlights the special friendship and the chemistry that she said resonated through her whole body, and Amanda said she was blown back in her seat.
The narrative completely changes from a prodigy and his sidekick to a genuine, balanced musical partnership.
And then we get an incredibly rare moment in television history. Simon Cowell publicly retracts his advice.
Which never happens.
Never. He admits that telling Jonathan to dump Charlotte was wrong and that staying together was, quote, the best decision you ever made.
Just consider the internal metrics that must have shifted for an industry titan like Cowell to make that admission on live television.
He had to eat his words.
He did, because Cowell realized that the emotional authenticity of their bond was translating to the audience way more powerfully than a technically perfect solo act ever would have.
The friction he tried to remove was actually generating all the heat.
Exactly. Furthermore, he acknowledges Charlotte directly, noting that she sang gutsy to hold her own.
Gutsy. I love that word for her, because gutsy implies survival under fire. She knew she was marked for elimination by the most powerful man in the room, and she anchored herself anyway to protect her friend.
She was thrilled to be noticed as an actual duo.
Right, but here's where it gets really interesting for me. The true turning point, the moment that sets up the rest of this artist's life, happens after the final, where they sing the prayer again.
Right. Simon calls them superstars and ridiculously good.
Yeah, they get these massive standing ovations. But Jonathan's internal reaction is what really matters here. He says, I've always suffered from confidence issues, and now I sort of realize, oh, people do actually quite like me.
It is a profound neurological shift.
What do you mean?
Well, for his entire life, his brain's predictive coding model anticipated rejection and mockery, mostly based on his physical appearance.
Right, the bully is taking pieces out of him.
Exactly. When he stepped onto that massive stage, his brain fully expected the primary school bullies. Instead, he received mass, overwhelming validation.
That strikes me as a form of exposure therapy on a colossal scale.
It really is.
Like, every time he sang and the audience roared with applause instead of laughing at him, It must have literally rewritten those neural pathways.
Mm.
You know, earlier he said the bullies took pieces out of him.
Yeah.
I genuinely wonder if the applause was actively returning those pieces, like the audience was physically handing back the fragments of his ego that had been chipped away for a decade.
That is such a compelling way to frame the restorative power of performance. Applause, when it follows an act of extreme vulnerability, is a profound societal confirmation of worth.
It really is.
It tells the artist the deepest, most hidden part of you is not only acceptable, it is necessary. And for the listener, just think about a time when someone else's belief in you allowed you to unlock your own potential.
Oh, absolutely.
Once that belief is internalized by the artist, the external regulator, the ground wire of Charlotte, is no longer strictly required for basic survival. The internal circuitry has been repaired.
Which perfectly explains the transition to his solo career. You cannot deliver a solo performance of deep, traumatic storytelling if you are still constantly afraid the audience is going to attack you.
No, you'd freeze up.
Right. You have to believe you belong on the stage before you can afford to break down on it. Which brings us to the lyrics and the recording of his solo version of the song Bang Bang.
The transition from singing duets about unity and hope to delivering a solitary narrative about sudden, violent, emotional abandonment, that is a massive artistic leap.
It's huge. And as music critics, we really need to look at the history of this song first, because Bang Bang has such a rich context before Jonathan even touches it.
Oh, definitely. We have to talk about the original context.
So for those who might not know, Bang Bang, My Baby Shot Me Down, was written by Sonny Bono back in 1966.
Right, and he wrote it for Cher.
He did. And Cher's version was a huge hit. It was very pop-focused, kind of this swinging 60s vibe. But then, later that exact same year, Nancy Sinatra released her cover of it.
Which is the version most people probably know today.
Yes, with that iconic, haunting tremolo guitar playing by Billy Strange. It completely stripped the song down. And obviously, Quentin Tarantino used that version in Kill Bill, which cemented it as this dark, moody, cinematic masterpiece.
It really did. Nancy Sinatra's version turned it into a revenge anthem in a lot of ways.
Right, but Jonathan Antoine's version, he takes it in a totally different direction. The orchestration and arrangement here are lush, sweeping.
It's very cinematic, but in a classical sense.
Exactly. And the lyrics, let's deep dive into the lyrics he's working with here, because they are fascinating when sung by an operatic tenor.
Let's do it.
The song sets a trap for the listener almost immediately. Verse 1 is entirely steeped in childhood innocence. I was 5 and she was 6. We rode on horses made of sticks. He wore black and I wore white. She would always win the fight.
The lyrical architecture here really relies on juxtaposition.
How so?
Well, the imagery is so rudimentary: stick, horses, basic black and white color assignments. It evokes a time before any real emotional complexity.
Right, it's just kids playing in the yard.
Yeah. Yet, even within this nursery rhyme structure, the dynamics of submission are established really early. She would always win the fight programs the listener to accept that the narrator is naturally yielding to this specific partner.
That's a great point. He has always been the vulnerable one in the dynamic. And then, verse 2 fast forwards through time. Seasons came and changed the time when I grew up. I called her mine. She would always laugh and say, remember when we used to play?
It builds a really solid foundation of shared history.
It does. They are adults now, but their intimacy is rooted in the fact that they knew each other before the world got complicated.
Right. It establishes an emotional baseline of absolute trust. You do not expect an ambush from the person who rode stick horses with you when you were 5 years old.
Exactly. But the chorus is exactly that. It's a total ambush. Bang, bang, she shot me down. Bang, bang, I hit the ground. Bang, bang, that awful sound. Bang, bang, my baby shot me down. The shift in meter and tone there is so jarring.
It really is a sucker punch. It starts like a nursery rhyme and ends in a tragedy.
Yes. The childhood game of pointing fingers and shouting bang, bang is suddenly recontextualized as a fatal emotional blow. And the repetition of bang, bang mimics the echoing nature of trauma.
Oh, wow.
It isn't a slow deterioration of a relationship. It is a sudden assassination.
But, I am struggling to reconcile the vocal instrument we discussed earlier with these specific lyrics.
Why is that?
Well, we are talking about a vocalist capable of producing the acoustic power of a young Pavarotti, right?
Right.
Why use a massive, booming, cathedral-filling voice to sing about a childhood game of stick horses? It seems like a bizarre mismatch of scale.
I see what you're saying, but the dissonance is actually the entire point.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you apply an operatic resonance to fragile colloquial lyrics, you elevate the mundane into the mythic. Oh, I like that. The mundane into the mythic.
Right. Because a pop singer delivering these lines makes it a story about a bad breakup, but a classical tenor delivering these lines makes it a tragedy of epic proportions.
The stakes feel so much higher.
Exactly. The sheer size of the voice emphasizes the magnitude of the loss. The narrator is a giant who has been felled by a single, unexpected shot.
Wow. And the final verse we have in the transcript explores the total paralysis that follows that shot. Music played, and people said, "Just for me, the church bells ring. Now she's gone. And I don't know why, till this day, sometimes I cry she didn't say goodbye."
The key line in that whole stanza is, "I don't know why."
Yeah, that lack of closure.
Exactly. It highlights the distinct agony of an unclosed narrative. Human beings are meaning-making machines. If a relationship ends with a clear reason, the brain can eventually process the data and move on.
But if they just ghost you?
Right. When someone vanishes without a reason, without a goodbye, the brain is caught in an infinite loop of trying to solve an unsolvable equation.
This makes me think about how a performer achieves authenticity when singing this. I mean, Jonathan Antoine is interpreting a song about a lifelong romantic partner who suddenly walks away. But how does he access the gravity required to sell that lyric?
This raises an important question about how performers channel their own unrelated traumas into the text of a song.
Right, because I don't think you need to have experienced a specific romantic betrayal to sing Bang Bang convincingly. You just need to know the somatic feeling of having the ground pulled out from under you.
You're touching on the concept of effective memory in performance.
What's that?
A highly skilled interpreter does not necessarily recall a matching event, like a bad breakup. They recall a matching emotional frequency.
Right, okay. Let's map his known history onto this song then. He knows exactly what it feels like to be safe in an environment, like a primary school classroom, and then suddenly, inexplicably, find yourself under attack by your peers.
Yes.
He knows the feeling of a sudden insult hitting him, taking a piece out of him.
Yeah.
He knows what it feels like to hit the ground socially and emotionally.
Absolutely.
He is taking the specific, jagged pain of being bullied and mapping it directly onto the lyrical framework of romantic abandonment.
It is a highly sophisticated act of emotional translation. The betrayal of a peer group and the betrayal of a lover, they trigger very similar neurochemical panic states.
That makes total sense.
Right. By channeling the lingering echoes of his own childhood trauma into the performance, he imbues the song with this undeniable lived reality. He isn't acting up there, he is repurposing his own historical pain.
Which brings us to the strangest and perhaps most telling part of the transcript of this song.
Oh, the final line.
Yes, the very last line of the provided lyrics is completely broken. It reads, "She didn't take the time to make she sound my baby shall be down."
Right.
It's garbled nonsense.
Well, from a purely textual standpoint, it appears to be a transcription error or just a massive misreading of standard syntax.
But, and hear me out, what if we look at it not as a typo, but as a literal representation of the narrator's mental state? We just talked about the brain getting stuck in an infinite loop when it doesn't get closure.
Yeah.
She did say goodbye leads directly into this linguistic car crash.
That is a highly analytical approach to textual anomalies, but I love it. If we view that broken line through the lens of acute psychological shock, it actually makes perfect sense.
How so, neurologically?
Well, trauma fundamentally disrupts the language centers of the brain, specifically Broca's area.
Okay.
When attempting to articulate a profoundly disorienting pain, the realization that the person you trusted most didn't even take the time to make a sound before leaving. The orderly structure of grammar literally fails.
It's a short circuit. The narrator's logical brain completely misfires in real time. My baby shot me down gets all tangled up with, she didn't make a sound.
Exactly.
The inability to form a coherent sentence at the end of the song is the truest expression of the grief. It's devastating precisely because it doesn't make logical sense anymore.
And that universality of disorientation is exactly why audiences connect with the performance decades after Sonny Bono wrote it.
Right.
The specifics of the story belong to the song, and the specific emotional fuel belongs to the singer's past. But the sensation of being suddenly unmoored, that is a collective human experience.
We've all been there.
Yes. We have all encountered a moment that caused our internal language to just fail.
Yeah. It is just a remarkable journey to trace today. I mean, we started with a teenage boy who was so wounded by his peers that his nervous system literally wouldn't allow him to sing without a friend standing next to him to absorb the threat.
Yeah, the ground wire.
Right. And we watched him navigate the brutal, commodified logic of the music industry and refuse to surrender his humanity for a quicker path to fame.
And then we observed the mechanisms of public validation, watching how external acceptance from that massive audience could slowly repair an internal sense of worth, completely recalibrating his physiological capacity to perform.
And finally, we saw how that repaired sense of worth didn't lead to some superficial, bulletproof arrogance.
No, not at all.
It led to the ability to stand entirely alone on a stage, without a shield, without a ground wire, and deliberately expose his deepest vulnerabilities to interpret a song about being emotionally destroyed. That is the true arc of this deep dive.
The evolution from a protective crouch to an exposed narrative requires immense psychological fortitude.
It absolutely does. So what does this all mean for you listening at home? If you are listening to this, I strongly urge you to seek out the audio and video of this chronological journey.
Highly recommend it.
Watch the physical posture of that 17-year-old in 2012. Listen to the tight, nervous energy of his speaking voice. And then go listen to his solo recording of Bang Bang. It is an absolute masterclass in how unresolved pain can cripple an artist, but processed, integrated pain becomes the very fuel that makes their art transcendent.
And as we conclude our analysis of this material, consider this broader implication. We often categorize a world-class singing voice purely as a biological lottery win. Just a fortuitous alignment of lung capacity, vocal fold thickness, and pharyngeal space.
Right, just good genetics.
Exactly. But tracing Jonathan's path challenges that totally reductionist view.
It poses a much larger question about the nature of the instrument itself. Is a great voice merely the product of genetics and technique? Or, when we strip away all the mechanics, is a truly generational voice just the auditory manifestation of a healed heart, finally possessing the structural integrity to demand that the world listen to its pain?
It's a fascinating thought to carry with you.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive here in the Music Room. We'll see you next time.